Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Idaho House Republicans podcast. This is where you get to learn a little bit more about the legislators that you send to the legislature. And you're going to find out what they care about, what bills they're running, what committees they're on. Just get to know them a little bit more on a personal level. And today we're really pleased to have Jeff Ehlers with us. And Jeff represents Legislative District 21 and he serves in House Seat B. You are in your second term.
Yes.
You are a sixth generation Idahoan. So does your family predate the formation of the state?
Yeah.
Wow.
Late 1800s.
That's incredible. You're a graduate of Shelley High School. You have a bachelor's and master's degree at BYU Provo, and then you got a MBA at the University of Utah. You're a CPA by trade. And most importantly, you're married to a wonderful woman named Carla, and you have 4 children.
Yes.
Right.
That's all very
And that's
true.
the best part.
It is.
Okay, so let's get into the start of this and just ask you first what committees that you're on.
Yeah, I'm on committees that really fit my interest and my experience to help make a difference for Idaho. So I'm on the Revenue and Tax Committee. I'm on the Business Committee, which makes sense because I'm a CPA and I'm also a small business
An
owner.
entrepreneur.
And then I'm chairman of the Ways and Means Committee.
Okay, so let's give people a little bit of inside baseball. How does one get selected as a chair of any committee?
Sure. In the House, the way we operate is it's all up to the speaker. Now, our speaker takes input from others and, listens to that. I think hopefully it's just because I have a good relationship with our colleagues, with our House members. I treat people with respect and I work hard.
And you have a competency in it. And if I remember, I think you were one of the youngest chairmen that have ever been appointed here in the State House. Is that true?
Potentially.
Yeah, I think you are. Don't be modest. You're the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. What happens in the Ways and Means Committee?
Yeah, Ways and Means is kind of a catch-all committee, the way we operate in the House here in Idaho.
Mhm.
Different states or Congress might do it differently. It captures things that maybe need to move fast at the end of session or might need an adjustment or just kind of needs a home somewhere
Right.
that might not necessarily fit in these other committees.
Some of the other
So
committees.
it's a pretty catch-all committee.
So you're saying like if a bill needs a bit of a rewrite or there's something that was left out of it, it could go to House Ways and Means, get fixed, and come back.
Yeah, it sometimes comes to us, and you'll see us be a lot more active at the end of session when there's a little more tight deadlines. We tend to get busier. It's also the leadership of both the minority and majority party are on that, and so they're also very involved as leadership and in the know on what's going on with Ways and Means.
Well, thanks for letting us know about those committees. So let's talk a little bit about our favorite topic probably of the year, and that is the budget. You're not on JFAC, you're not on the
Correct.
Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee, but you do have a lot of background in finance and know how business runs. What's your impression of the budget from the House perspective?
Yeah, so I'm grateful in Idaho we have the Constitution that tells us to have a balanced budget.
Amen.
And even though that forces us to make hard choices, I think that's our job and that's what we need to do. So right now on revenue and tax, well, I'll back up. In a budget, right, there's 2 parts. There's what comes in, the revenue, and what goes out, the expenditures. Right. And so I've been focused a lot on the revenue side. After this one big, beautiful bill, conformity bill, I think we'll get focused now on the expenditure side and how to make sure our budget balances through that. There's some tough work to be done.
So in the Revenue Taxation Committee, which you're a part of, there's always talk about the number, right? The revenue number. The governor will offer his perspective. You offer your perspective. There's a committee that works on this. Can you talk about how you determine from the Revenue and Taxation Committee where you're going to start, the money coming in part?
Yeah, so the committee is called the Economic Outlook and Revenue Assessment Committee. It's a mouthful. I co-chair that committee, and so I've got these last 2 years have that experience. So we bring in outside experts, a lot of economists, some national, some more local, to talk about Idaho specifically, and we try to understand where's the economy going, what are our best projections, what do we think? And so with all of that, we looked at what the governor was thinking and how he came up with his numbers. And we were slightly more optimistic than the governor, not by too much, but a lot of it has to do with where we think the trends are going. Are they moving down or moving up? So we took a slightly more optimistic projection.
And you get a sense of that through the budget monitor, I imagine, which comes out monthly, that shows kind of the inflows relative to what we expect. And how are those looking recently?
Yeah, they've been on the uptick, and for any nerd that wants to geek out and look at those, they're on. I think
They're on the Website. Yeah.
Yep. So you can dive in and look at all of those. These last couple months have been improving. I know. So our fiscal year starts July 1. I know. So over the summer, there's some nerves about what was happening. But lately, we're on an upward trend. Which is
Perfect.
good for the state.
Okay, so let's stay on the revenue side. One thing that will impact the revenue this year is the big, beautiful bill, which was passed by the federal government, but it has implications for Idaho. You are running the bill for what's called conformity. So maybe talk about what that word conformity means and tell people about your bill.
Yeah, so conformity is important because if we didn't have conformity, then when you file your taxes and keep your books, you'd keep a federal way of doing taxes. And then you'd have to restart over in Idaho and redo all your books and all the calculations. And we have to add a bunch of code into Idaho. What we say is okay, you do your federal forms, you fill that out, and you get to this number. Instead of redoing all that work, we're going to take that number and move it to start your Idaho forms.
Right.
That's called conformity. It's important. Saves a lot of time, confusion, and trouble. So this year, the way the One Big Beautiful Bill worked happened in July, and it went retroactive back to the beginning of 2025.
Okay.
And so when we left session last year in April, that wasn't in our projections. Nobody knew everything that was going in the One Big Beautiful Bill or if it would be retroactive.
Right.
So now we're here trying to grapple with what that means for Idaho. And so the way my bill does that is full conformity, meaning we're going to take what Trump passed, what Congress passed, and those tax cuts, and allow Idahoans to have those benefits with a couple of exceptions.
Tell people about the exceptions.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 of them I saw so far.
Yeah, within this bill, 2 major ones. The bonus depreciation, they're both related to businesses and how much when they buy a big investment or project or property, how much of that can they take as a deduction up front versus spread it out over
time
over the life of that asset. So Idaho, I think going back to 2009, has not adopted bonus depreciation. We haven't conformed. If we were to do that this year, I've seen numbers between 400 to 800 million on that provision.
Of impact to revenue?
Impact to revenue to Idaho.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when you hear numbers in the media about that high, that's assuming we would bring in bonus depreciation, which we're not. Nobody is contemplating that. And the bill that I'm running does not contemplate that.
Okay.
The other piece is what's called R&E, research and experimentation. The government calls it that. Most businesses call it R&D. So it's kind of your new innovation, creating new products, developing new things. We took a slightly different tweak on it. So basically, business had a big stockpile of R&E benefits, and One Big Beautiful Bill let them take it all in 2025 as a lump sum. Looking at our budget, that was a big 1-year hit in a lump sum. So for businesses with that R&E, we're going to spread it out over the next few years. So the budgetary impact lessens and it goes into future years when hopefully the budget is a little bit better to absorb that.
Now, when people go on, you can go on the legislature, you can look at the bill. There's a bill index there. You can look at all the bills. You can look at House Bill 559, and they have text to the bill, but also has a statement of purpose. And part of the statement of purpose shows you what you believe the fiscal impact is going to be to the state. And I believe the note said that it would be around $155 million in 2026, $175 million in 2027. So that's part of that revenue number that you do not expect to take in over the next 2 years, correct?
Correct, yeah. So we think how much taxes we'll collect, but if we give tax breaks, we won't collect that. So it lowers our revenue number. And that number in our House and Senate joint rules, we're supposed to have a reasonable estimate for a fiscal note. And so without getting into all the details, I've spent months and months looking into this bill. There's, I think, 30 or 39 provisions that impact Idaho's tax conformity and just making sure we accounted for those, looking at all the various estimates to dial into it.
We have a really good co-sponsor on the bill. The Speaker of the House, Mike Moyle, I saw was co-sponsors. That's always good. Now let's talk about the other part. So you said once we get through the conformity, once we get through the revenue side, we'll start turning towards the expense side, right? So any preliminary thoughts about the expense side being more than last year, equal to last year, down from last year? What should Idahoans expect trend-wise, if you can give any sort of early indication?
Yeah, I think, the governor's asked for some holdbacks. And he's set aside some things.
Like education.
Mm-hmm. And so the JFAC co-chairs have looked at doing a little bit more. I think that's some decisions we'll have to make. One thing I'll just throw out, I had our staff run some numbers on this. And if you look at the proposed expenditures, at least in the governor's budget, and you account for inflation and you account for population growth, right? We're a growing state.
Right.
And we've had inflation. What does that do? The numbers of expenditures in the governor's budget takes us back to about where 2022 spending was.
Okay.
So if you think back to 2022, things weren't horrible.
No, they weren't.
So I think it's helpful to have some of that perspective as well, that, account for inflation and population growth.
Well, around 2009, we had to cut the budget by over 20% per
Yeah,
year. So
we're not looking at those types of
no,
numbers.
of course not.
So,
But I'm just saying the state made hard choices, survived, and now thriving. Let's talk about a topic that's always front and center of every session seems to be tax cuts, whether they're property tax cuts or corporate tax cuts, income tax cuts for the individual. Now that we have $155 million of tax cuts into Idahoans through the BBB, do you expect that tax cuts will be part of the Idaho legislature discussions this year that would be Idaho driven as opposed to federally driven?
Sure. If I look into my crystal ball for this legislative session, yes.
Yeah.
If there are any more income tax reductions, I think those would be, even if we pass a bill, I think we would put off the impact into future years. But the bottom line, even after conformity, we still have a cushion there. And we're talking about how much of a cushion are we comfortable with. But seeing any more additional income taxes cuts, I think would have to go into the future.
Representative Ehlers, you've been very active in thinking about how to reduce property tax. You have any thoughts on the future of continuing to reduce property tax? Maybe this isn't the session for it, but do you still think that homes will see future property tax decreases?
I have an idea. I've been working on a few years to essentially almost treats property tax like sales tax, but it's not quite, but that you reach some sort of cap. Everybody has a cap that they reach to. You pay into the system, you've reached your maximum over time. We have to look at things like making sure we're not shifting it between other property owners and types of property. But I think that would help, especially the way I've been looking at it is if you paid off your home, then there's a way to pay off your property taxes as well. There's some other ideas floating out there. I don't want to steal my colleagues' thunder, but there are others also looking at this property tax idea and what can we do for the people of Idaho and their property.
So let's talk about House Bill 526. It's a deregulation bill that would help entrepreneurs. That's your bill. So tell people about that bill, why you're bringing it, and what it does.
Yeah, I really like this one because it helps small businesses and it helps entrepreneurs. It's similar to a lemonade stand bill we did last year, where if you have $5,000 or less in sales, you don't have to get all these permits and pay sales tax and all those things, right? It's just a small seller getting started. So what this does, I found in the food world, is there's two types of food that health and welfare looks like. There's this cottage food industry, which is baked goods, cookies, and then divide a line, there's things that need to be frozen or temperature controlled or in the fridge. Cottage foods don't have to go through all the hoops as much. Right. What I'm saying is for a small business that's trying to get started in this other world, think like ice cream or bacon or salsa, they could have a lot of prohibitive costs and government permits and regulation and a commercial kitchen before they even start, before they even know they have a business.
Okay.
Keeps them out. So it's just saying, hey, as you get started up to this $5,000, these types of temperature controlled foods can live in the cottage food space.
Gotcha.
Yeah, makes it much easier.
You're like creating an incubator essentially for these small foods to get some ramp up time.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, right? And as they ramp up, sure, then they can go back to being under the regulations of the other businesses. But it's just a way to help them get started and help the small entrepreneur.
That's a great idea. So let's as our final topic today, let's talk about the DOGE efforts from the state. So there's a lot of DOGE effort, had a lot of notoriety at the federal level, but we didn't seem to see it come through the spending bills as much as we'd hoped. But similarly, Idaho did its own DOGE effort. You were a very instrumental part of that effort. So what is the DOGE reality here? Will we see something from that that's actually going to help Idahoans relative to taxes or something like that?
Yeah, so I co-chaired that effort over the interim last year, and we just released a memo, I guess it's called. I think 22 recommendations that we had come up with that the task force agreed to that we should do. So it's around consolidation, it's around code cleanup. There was a lot of tasks that we took on. And the goal now is to move those into legislation. One of the things with the federal level DOGE was it was an executive branch effort. So they could do some things or make executive orders, but we're a legislative effort. So to make it long lasting, which is our goal, we want things to continue on this. Right. We need to go through the legislative process and get bills passed. So almost all of those 22 recommendations, we have bills in the drafting process. My focus has been tax conformity, but once that's hopefully through here soon, you're going to start seeing some more DOGE bills come through. to help the state. I think we could see millions of dollars saved if all of our recommendations are brought forward. And I
Fantastic.
think that can help our budget.
And when you say millions, you're saying single-digit millions, double-digit millions? What are you thinking?
Up to tens of millions of dollars if are implemented, right? And so we still
That'll
have
be
to,
helpful in this budget year for sure, right?
yeah, we still have to convince our colleagues of that and get our bills out there and get them through. But I think it'll be beneficial to the state. And that's an effort I hope that we continue on after this session, because as we dug into it, we discovered there's a lot more work to be done around this efficiency effort. So we hope to continue our work there.
Well, go Idaho. So everyone, thank you for joining us today. We've been able to spend some time with Jeff Ehlers, who is Legislative District 21, House Seat B, and he's in his second term. And you're doing great work for Idaho. You just hopped right in. You've had a real impact. So thank you for all the work you've done on behalf of Idaho. And thank you for joining us on the Idaho House Republicans podcast. Until we see you next time, as we always say, God bless the great state of Idaho. Thank you, Representative Ehlers.
Thank you.
From timber towns to wheat field roads, different roads, but the same old hope. We bow our heads and we stand up tall, answering the people when due.